This morning, we are very proud to announce a tremendous victory for California. As a result of 13 months of intense discussions, sometimes battle, we have delivered to California $18 billion in relief for California's homeowners. This represents one of the largest dollar amounts to come to California. Certainly many of you know the tobacco settlement many years ago brought $25 billion, but that was over the course of 25 years. This represents $18 billion coming to California homeowners over the course of the next 3 years. So a little bit about the history. Many of you know that we have been in discussions with our federal partners, in particular the United States Department of Justice and HUD, around what should be a fair deal for California as a result of the crisis that was created and the harm that resulted in California because of the foreclosure issue. We discussed what we needed in terms of making sure there would be meaningful relief, but not at the expense of meaningful investigations. We discussed the fact that it was imperative that we not give a blank check of immunity to the banks for their wrongdoing. In September of last year, after months of discussions, I made a decision to withdraw California from those discussions because the offer on the table was just simply inadequate and insufficient. Several months later, we were asked to come back to the table. And frankly, part of our approach at that point was to not only have a conversation with our federal partners, but also talk directly with the banks. And talk with them about the fact that in California we have about 2 million homes that are carrying mortgages that are underwater. We needed to talk with them directly about the fact that we have spent time in Stockton, California. We have spent time in East LA talking with homeowners who all share stories that represent some of the worst of human experience. We have talked with those homeowners about the fact that they believed in the American dream. They worked hard. They played by the rules. They bought a home. They were paying their taxes on time, their bills on time, and then they found through a series of situations that included turn of the economy and losing their jobs, that they were in the process of foreclosure. We talked with those homeowners about the fact that they all want to stay in their homes and they want to pay to stay in their homes. This issue has never been about anything other than allowing homeowners, hardworking people, to be able to stay in their homes. And we were very determined to make sure that California, the hardest hit in the country, would receive its fair share. Many of you may know California had for a long time 9 of the top 10 cities in the country hardest hit. We currently have 7 of the top 10 hardest hit. In fact, our competition was with Nevada because Las Vegas or Stockton alternated as the #1 hardest hit in the country. And so when we approached this issue, it was not an intellectual approach. It was not about politics. It was about what could we do to ensure that our homeowners would actually see relief. And essentially what we have done is this. We have achieved what we are very proud to call the California Commitment. Many of you heard there was a press conference this morning in Washington, D.C. announcing the national settlement. But I want to talk specifically and in particular about what California is going to get. What we have negotiated is that we will be able to verify promises, that we will be able to ensure that we're not just left with hope based on promises, but that actually instead we can ensure that we will get what is written in a deal that is specific for California. The deal that is specific for California includes $12 billion of principal reductions and short sale relief for California homeowners. The deal specific to California ensures that we will be able to make sure that when the banks receive credit for $1 that they proffer in the area of principal reduction or short sale, that they only receive that credit if the homeowner actually receives that dollar. As opposed to what we saw in the Countrywide settlement years ago, which was that the banks got credit for the promise. Well, I'll tell you, there's a simple principle in law, and in particular contracts law, which is the deal ain't done just based on a promise. It's based on a promise and acceptance and then performance. And so we learned from, in hindsight, what we didn't do with Countrywide, and we made sure we wouldn't be in that situation again on this situation. What we did is we made sure that we also would bring something that was for a long time an issue and dispute, which is that we would be able to bring an opportunity for homeowners who are underwater but current in their payments, allow them the ability to refinance their loans. So part of this resolution brings to California approximately $850 million to allow those homeowners to be able to refinance their home. We also, in the California commitment, wanted to make sure that, again, those hardest hit communities in the country, which are our neighbors and in our backyard, would be prioritized and not overlooked when the relief started being doled out. We wanted to make sure that places like Stockton, we wanted to make sure that places like Boyle Heights would receive a priority. So we built into this a California commitment that requires the banks, through an incentive and a penalty, to focus on our hardest hit communities. It's a very unique to California aspect of what has come out of this process. We have also done the work of making sure that we are going to get restitution for those homeowners in California who actually have been foreclosed upon. So that will total approximately $279 million, which will be a fund available for California homeowners who have been foreclosed upon. It's important to note that Los Angeles alone, through the total amount that is the California commitment, is expected to receive about $4 billion. You all know about a year ago, in May of last year, we created in the California Attorney General's office what we called the Mortgage Fraud Strike Force. And we created that unit in this office, taking the best and brightest lawyers from the office, from our consumer fraud, corporate fraud, and criminal divisions, along with sworn investigators, to address this issue in California. This team, and many of them are in this room, and I just want you to raise your hands because you all are just amazing and have been working around the clock. It just, honestly, led by Michael Troncoso. They have been working around the clock. Ben Deal, who has been in this office for many years, was one of the first people who provided leadership in the national discussions around what should be a fair outcome in this situation. And so through their work in the Mortgage Fraud Strike Force, we have had a holistic approach to this issue. And in fact, I will tell you that this settlement is only part of a much broader focus for us. The focus has been the settlement. The focus has been to deal with the predators who have, like bottom feeders, evolved around these vulnerable communities, taking on the form of lawyers and brokers. Many of you know cases that we are currently prosecuting where people with professional licenses will approach these homeowners and suggest that if they pay them exorbitant amounts of money, they will help them, and of course they are not. We are focusing also on the fact that in California, while this is a tremendous victory, $18 billion for those who are in their circumstance as a result of the conduct by the 5 biggest banks, the reality is 62% of the mortgages in California are owned by Fannie and Freddie. And that is why months ago we sued Fannie and Freddie in California. Because this is about making sure that we bring relief to all Californians. And our focus then cannot afford to be myopic and look only at the banks. Because the reality is that Fannie and Freddie are right now being run by a fellow named DeMarco, who I've said before and I say again should step aside, because the guy can clearly not figure out what his job requires. And in particular, it requires that in California we see principal reductions on those Freddie and Fannie loans. So part of our focus is also on Freddie and Fannie. Our focus also includes the reality that part of the issue is that there were these mortgage-backed securities that were bundled up and sold to investors, private investors and public investors. The biggest public investor, of course, being CalPERS. And so part of our focus has also been in doing the work of investigating what went on there and whether there were false claims associated with the representation of the value of those mortgage-backed securities when we, the largest public investor, may have purchased those securities. So there's a lot of work to be done, a lot of work yet to be done. This today represents a great victory, but there's still a lot more to do. And I want to just thank you all for your attention to this over the many months, because it has been important. And I'm going to take questions, but I also want to emphasize that we have a lot of information in your packets about where consumers and homeowners can go for help. Part of the issue that we have been seeing on the streets is that, and I know this as a career prosecutor, for many years I prosecuted domestic violence, I prosecuted child abuse, I prosecuted crimes that occur in the context of the home. Crimes that cause the victim, because of the way it went down, to be very vulnerable, but also very embarrassed. And when I go and I meet with the homeowners in Los Baños or in Boyle Heights or Stockton, I meet with folks who are hardworking people who were so proud when they bought that home. I remember when my mother bought our first home. We were teenagers. She was so proud. We were so proud. And so when these folks are on the verge of losing that, they're embarrassed and their pride has been damaged. And so many of them exist with their desperation and vulnerability in isolation. And that's where the predators have evolved. So part of our focus also is to get the information out to homeowners about what relief is available to them, not only through this settlement, but through the hard and good work of community organizations, which are there to help them for free, instead of going to folks who would charge them money for what should be a free service.